Welcome to Mastering the Game.
I'm Seth.
I'm Shane, and today we're talking about world building with pre-existing lore. So, Seth, when you came on to Venture Forth about 2 years-ish into our process, you took over for our other DM, Ethan, who did an amazing job, but needed to step back. And you came into what you have called a fire hose of lore. Was that how new of an experience was that for you? Is that something that you've done?
No, definitely not in this same context, right? Like I had never like taken over a D&D game. I mean, I think the closest analog, I suppose, would be like effectively like the way I kind of thought about it was like, oh, it's a campaign setting, right? Just like Forgotten Realms or Greyhawk or you know any of the other ones, Midgard, any that have come out. So I was like, okay, this is a campaign setting. So now I just have to learn about like all of the like what are the lore? How is it different? What's everything about it? And so that's kind of how I viewed it. It was of course like there was just the added element of like, oh, it's a show like for people.
Like, there's people on the other end of this.
It's not just like for us, right? Like at the table. Right. So that was an very interesting process. And I remember like I think I've talked about this in like some of our scholars rests and things. Right. But you know, it was like much like building characters in D&D goes like backwards and forwards at the same time. How you like make decisions in the moment about your character that like end up impacting them, and then you also like write your backstory or whatever. So I had to like learn all the characters' backstories and then like learn about what had been established about Elbor. Right. And thank God for you and the Harken Backs.
I'm your recapper, Shane. Welcome to Harken Back.
And just like your own knowledge, because without those I'd have been fucked. Like it would have been so hard because I wouldn't have known. Like you laid such an amazing foundation with the Harkenbacks because ultimately they're like, hey, these are the important like big high level, the Zeitgeist kind of in Elbor and like the major inflection points of the campaign so far. So my first thing that I did was I went to the Harkenbacks. I listened to every one of them, and so like I listened to all of those because I was like, okay.
Lot of alliteration.
The synergized scufflers sprang skillfully into the scary skirmish, foiling phantasmal fears, forced foxtrots, forestalling fabrications, fluctuating foundations, and formidable fiends. Posing as a patchwork potpourri of pedantic portal probers, the plucky party passed pliant perusal, pacified their panic, and plunged promptly into the portentous pitch of prospective pain.
It was so much, and I love it though. It's one of my favorite like things that is in there. It sings my heart sings with joy.
Speaking of building things backwards and forward, it was literally just like I was making those things and I was like, I don't know if anybody's gonna listen to this ever, or like I know like some people are paying attention by like the 10th episode we had some audience, which is a miracle, but even then it was just like I just to keep myself entertained I'm gonna do this dumb thing.
It's such a fun thing, like I think it speaks to this sort of universal truth of like, well, if you make art that you enjoy, somebody else is gonna enjoy it too,
hopefully, right? Unless you are a total like freak circumstance. Which sometimes I think about.
Hey, but you know what? Like what? 7 billion people on the planet. Odds are
somebody out there.
And that's kind of the beauty of the internet, is it kind of lets those people find you. You're not limited by like proximity. You know what I mean? It's like someone and we have now, right? In our audience, it's like, holy shit, there are people all over the world, right? And across time zones. And that's just, it's wild. But I mean, it was so nice to have like, it was like having a cheat sheet for Elbor with the Harkenbacks. So it was really, that's kind of how I viewed it. And then, I mean, you can attest to this. Like, there would be regular times where I would like text you like a couple days before a session. I'd be like, hey, what was the episode when this happened?
Which episode? And I'd be like, and for a while there, I had a really encyclopedic. We've had after 200 episodes, I had less, but for a while I was really good about knowing which episode. Now we have the wiki folks.
Oh my gosh.
They know those things better than I do.
Well, it's funny. Nice. We had our epilogue the other night on whenever, I don't know when this comes out, but we had it the other night. Right. And Tengu, who is one of our lore masters, he was like, I asked them something a couple of weeks ago, and I don't even remember what. Oh, it was the mountains. What were the names? Well, I was like, what did I say were the name of the mountains to the east of Stillgate? Right. And they like messaged me back, and I was like, oh, thanks, guys, because I couldn't find it in my notes. And that was very helpful. And I was like, oh, right, because I needed it for a piece of lore that I was building. And I adore them, but they frighten me because they make me like, I'm I'm like, oh gosh, like I'm like suddenly I have this group of people that I'm like kind of in a way beholden to,
right?
Because I'm like, oh shit, like people are double checking my work,
right?
You know,
right. Which is like, I think for like more DMs out there, the players are double checking your work, so to speak, right?
Yeah.
But it is that added element of like an audience, and then for us, we are so fortunate, but also that added stress of like, there's people really paying attention to those things,
really paying attention.
Even in the moment where in a recent episode we had the original heroes of Elbor.
Yeah.
We meet them in their in a spooky form, and you say in the moment, you're like, and after 800 years or something like that, you qualify it just in case.
Because I was like, oh fuck, how much was it? Like, yeah, exactly. Like, just in case, I was like, oh, it wasn't 8, it was like whatever. I can't remember, right? Because it's like I don't have. You know,
right.
And it's like I wish I had an eidetic memory or whatever.
Right. Oh my god.
So it is sometimes I'm like ish, like ish
around that, and I think that's a tool that people can use more than you think you can.
Yes.
I think as a DM, your players are gonna get, because like there's a lot of RPGs out there that are set in existing universes. Like the Alien one is the first one that comes to mind.
Yes.
And it's like, that continuity doesn't have any coherence at all,
right?
So in a way it's like, well, who cares, right? But even if you have people who are sticklers about like when Wayland Yutani was founded and how old Wayland was before he died and stuff like that, like you could be like, around that, you guys are in the period, after the first Xenomorph, before the Ripley was reincarnated, cloned, or whatever into a superhero. If that's even if people even want that anywhere near the continuity.
So someone has constructed the timeline. Like it's in somewhere, right? Someone's been like, and this happened, and this happened. Yeah. But yeah, to your point, like world building. I mean, one, it's interesting to me because I'm like, even we get stuff wrong all the time. There's amendments, right? Yeah. Like, I mean, what comes to mind, right? Like for the longest time, I was listening to a podcast the other day, and it was like, for the longest time, we thought, right, Mesopotamia and Ur was the oldest civilization on Earth. It was like 6,000 or 7,000 BC. I don't know. Don't quote me. But it was pretty freaking old. And then in 2012, they found Göbekli Tepe in modern day Turkey, and that's 12,000 BC is what it's dated to. And it is a civilization, like it is a megalithic structure.
Right.
And so that's like 4,000 years before we thought humans were capable of building big structures. They found a big one. And so it's like it completely upended the known archaeological record. And I'm like, okay, well, if that can happen in real life where there's hundreds, if not thousands, well, there are thousands of like scientists and people dedicated.
Right.
It's like sometimes shit crops up.
And like an actual, it's an actual rigor applied outside of just like
fucking the two of us. Because this is it. This is the continuity crew right here. It's in this room.
It's me and you and Rebecca's notebook.
Yeah, right. Oh my God, the sacred notebook. The red notebook that I carried around since. That was another big one too, actually.
Yeah.
Especially in the beginning, I referenced that notebook a lot. And unfortunately, as we got later and later and I learned more and more, I had to, I think, reach out to you less and less. But I remember in those first couple weeks, I was like, okay, when did this happen? What happened? What was this important bit?
Right. Right.
So.
And that's the thing too, that's like, especially with like the way Ethan DM'd, I feel like it was this kind of he was sort of like building the track in front of the train as he went in terms of the world itself. And he was very transparent about that. He was like,
it was his style.
He was like, I haven't put anything in this city over here yet, so like I'm gonna put whatever you're going to there. And like one little like this is a very, very kind of like deep cut for people who aren't necessarily caught up on the show, but we go to a city in the Underdark called Doirnin. Yeah. And the day of recording that episode, he was like, hey, what's a good name for a city in the Underdark? And I was like, Doirnin, because I love Dris Do'Urden books. Yeah. And I was like, that's kind of a drow sounding name.
Absolutely.
Whatever. I was like, and even I think at the time, Ethan was like, that's very Tolkien. And I was like, sure.
Sounds great.
It's some syllables I mashed together that, that would work for me. And then now that's like canon place
right?
in our
Again,
world,
you get
right?
to you get to make it as you go,
Yeah.
right? Which is, I think, and a little peek behind the curtain. I remember after we finished the first Comic-Con episode, you guys immediately teleported to Westreach.
Yeah.
And I was like, shit, because I had not really built it out, and I knew all I knew about Westreach was that it was built in these concentric rings, and those were the districts of the city.
Yeah.
But I didn't have it fully fleshed out with all the different land masses and stuff. So I got to add next, and then of course furiously world built in between. But I think that's
shout out to everybody at home who's furiously world building.
Yes.
Right?
Oh my gosh. Yeah. Which it goes to show, right? It's oh, this is just normal. This is just how this goes.
Yeah.
In this hobby, because it's in a world where you do not control. I mean, I can nudge, but
Right.
I had no, you guys, I thought you'd go back to Stillgate, and I had time.
Yeah.
I pointed you towards Westreach, and you guys, being the amazing players you are, you were pull the lever.
There we go.
Yeah. And I was oh no. So,
which is a whole other element of it, right? Is who are your players, and are they, I'm very proud of in Venture Forth the degree to which we adhere to the lore and care about the lore and pursue it and remember things about it.
It's awesome.
Or in that, I think in that moment, because we were talking to the Weaver or whatever, and she said something about Tialra's land, or so you mentioned something Tialra's Bastion or some kind of thing that I was oh, that's Westreach. I was able to be all right, we're going to Westreach, and I'm very proud of that.
Yeah.
But also, if your players aren't that, and I feel like most
engaged.
players aren't, right?
No.
And also and it's probably not even their fault, because a lot of times you're playing games once a month or whatever, right? You don't have to have as stringent a structure to your world building in that way.
Absolutely,
I guess, right?
yeah. I think that's a funny thing that I hear a lot of DMs who are I thought I seeded this well, this plot thing or whatever, this thing in the world,
right?
And then I big reveal and it just falls flat, and it's because the players just didn't remember.
It just didn't clock.
And so sometimes it's you really do have to kind of you got to make sure that bell gets rung enough times that when the moment comes, and especially if you're we're very fortunate that we get this opportunity to play together all the time, so that helps tremendously with that continuity of knowledge in you guys,
right?
Because we had talked about Tialra Trissa a couple weeks before, and so you, being a very very intelligent, very astute player, were hey, I know what that means.
Well, I love, I'm always asking, I'm hey, what can you tell me about this place and that place? Because I like to play characters who've been around a little bit, and then they can retain some of that. So I kind of study, I do a little bit of prep, as a player,
Which is amazing. That's my dream, right? And I think that and one of the cool things about, to this point, right, and what we're talking about, which is existing lore.
Yeah.
It's the ideal scenario for me as the DM is I get to, when you go to a city, I get to go you go ahead.
Yeah.
You're go ahead. Because you know everything about it, right? Or it's hey, you these bunch of places, this was your routine as a person, when you lived here or whatever, here's all the faces you might know, the old people you might look up, how to get there and what the norms and customs are. That's really exciting to me. And I think that in, and in certain places, right, settings, if you're lucky and you have really good players who are really engaged, it's going to be hey, let's really spend some time talking about this, because then you get to build on that, right? That pre-existing lore. And then add your own strokes of color to it too.
Yeah. And when the players get that access to that creative control of things too, that's so enabling, and that makes it a more collaborative experience.
Yeah. And then you have this confidence then that players are going to if they decide to contribute to that world building or invent something, right, or create a piece of it, that it's grounded from this place of them really understanding what happens there and what's normal and what all of that stuff, right?
Yeah.
I think to that point, right when we went to Westreach, we talked about okay, what does the Temple of Famir look like here?
Yeah.
What is it, right?
Yeah.
And then we got some really fun bits and we got to build some elements of Kellic that we maybe hadn't really discovered before.
Totally.
because you had done so much work on that side of it, and then we got to kind of marry that, like, okay, this is Westreach, and so this is how it might manifest or like be different than some other place. But then like you had all of that wealth of knowledge of Famir, and then we got to like make this really freaking cool place that like
really
had
cool.
a big impact.
It's really cool.
And was the backdrop for an incredible scene in the game and in the campaign that people still are like, it was one of their favorite things that happened, which was really fun.
Maybe we'll be talking about that scene.
Hey, maybe
in a future episode of this.
Maybe we will. That's a good one. That's a good one. I would like to talk about that one.
Yeah. Which, speaking of, I guess we will get one thing we're going to do with this format.
Oh, yeah.
Is we're going to look at a scene that people requested we do an examination of. And sort of talk about what it was like for you to DM it, what it was like to be a player for it, and like what sort of elements of DMing and playing are at work there, and if there's any like tea about it, we can kind of talk about.
Peel back the curtain
A little bit on these moments. So this moment is basically your first episode DMing the show.
Yeah. Oh man.
And like I cannot tell you like as a just a little setup. So basically. Ethan has just abdicated the throne, so to speak, very graciously, bringing you on as the DM and just sort of like leaning back and watching. It was very sweet to see him kind of enjoy that. And you just kind of like closed out that episode, and then here you are with the first big episode, and like you drop some bombs. Yeah. And I was just so like proud of you, like, and just like as a, as like the showrunner of Venture Forth, I was like, thank fucking God. I was like, all of my fears were, already like, you're so comfortable in the chair. Yeah. You have such a wealth of knowledge about the game and all that good stuff, and you're a great performer. But like, it was really like, oh, we can do this. Like, our table is locked in. We've got this thing. So, this is my character Kellic facing his basically nemesis or his mentor turned evil, and trying to. Kind of understand her.
Gosh, I haven't watched this in a minute. Coming in, and this was like the first thing.
It's crazy.
I was like, but on the upside, I felt like I was like, man, if I can do this, I can do anything.
Right, it tears the Band-Aid off.
Such a huge like inflection point. But all right,
tell me, why am I still alive?
By the grace of the goddess, you so rue. You yet draw breath, and nothing further than that. Let me tell you.
I suppose I should be grateful. Her light yet shines upon me.
That's the part I can't square. Her light has shone upon you more than most. Her forgiveness. Her indulgence. You've used every ounce of the grandeur she provides. What I don't understand is how you can have felt its shine. Heard her hum. And turned away from it.
I'll never forget that line.
I found something greater.
If you mean a base that holds your chained behemoth, then no, I don't see how that is something greater.
Oh, Kellic. For all your wisdom, I've seen many years, and I know more.
The shake in my voice is nerves.
But it sounds like a thrill.
Demon or devil, thrown into the pit with the rest. Gods fear him, the old and the new. And why shouldn't they? For he is a god, and has
heart
been
is pounding
since before your precious Famir drew her first breath as the mortal she once was.
You're a liar.
Rebecca's freaking out.
And that's what we'll pick up next time.
Oh man!
And there's your look at your expression. You're so proud.
I was just
You're
like, I was like, oh, I did it. I got through. Well, that's like, I mean, it's so crazy. Like we talked about this on something recently. I'm like, this was like the lore drop. This was the twist of the whole campaign.
It's the crux of the campaign.
Yeah, and I'm like, my first fucking episode, I was like, God damn it. Which was so fun in so many ways. I really did just get to like totally totally just like and rudder the ship in a very big way.
Yeah.
And like credit to you as a player, because like I'm like coming in as like this totally new, figure, and I'm like taking so much of an integral part of like your character and just ripping the pages of it
but
up.
it's such a delight, right?
But bless you for like going with it,
Dude.
like, and I'm like, this was it. I mean, it was Ethan, but it was just such a, I was like, I remember, thinking about, I was like, Artemisia was, in the know, right? I mean, she's right hand person to Corvin, and
villain number 3 in the pecking order.
Absolutely. She's one of the most powerful members of this organization that's trying to do this.
Yeah.
And I was like, she fucking knows. Like, of course she knows. And then I was like trying to figure out like, how do I? And I was like, oh, she just tells him,
right?
Like she had like, and it was also an opportunity for me to again like really give us this sort of clarity and sense of direction and like, oh, where are we going,
right?
Because I just like. But man, that was gnarly. It's so funny because like I can see like if you look closely, you can see my mouth kind of like twitching.
Yeah, you guys are like little trembling.
It was all nerves. Like,
it's so funny because to me it reads, and I imagine to many of the audience, it reads as like she's so pumped. Like she seems like she's getting
relishing
this like perverse thrill that she gets to like drop this knowledge on Kellic and
whole body shaking,
shake his world. So yeah, that's so funny.
But I was shaking everywhere. Like I was so terrified to do that because again, it was like I knew it was a very big moment and thing for your character.
Yeah.
And I knew that it was like a huge reveal for the whole of the story.
Right.
And it was like first fucking like 30 minutes in the chair. Like it was literally right out of the gate.
Yeah.
But man, what a wild one.
It's a cool I think for one, it's to me as a DM, it's a super satisfying thing to be able. It's like such a fun, like the fact that you get to be like, how did you phrase it? The goddess. We just watched it, but I'm like, whatever you say about Famir. Oh no, you say like for all your wisdom, I have many years or whatever. It's like, oh no, is that feeling as a player? You're like, shit, I have nothing to say to that because you're the DM. So it's like whatever amount of wisdom I could have as a player, you're gonna be able to, because you created the world.
And
so it's I'm not saying, I'm saying this as a compliment or as like I guess to sort of celebrate like how fun that must have been also to be able to do that kind of like earth-shattering thing.
It was fun, but I mean, it was definitely fun. And again, like your response to it made me feel a lot better because, but I don't remember if I gave you a heads up or not, but I think I was just like, hey, so some crazy shit might happen. Like how we're like, because I wanted, again, our relationship was still so new.
Yeah.
And we had, now
fresh.
I feel like fuck, we've been playing together for 2 years.
Yeah.
I just trust you, like basically implicitly. I'm do whatever.
We
dude.
can just
like,
rock and roll.
I believe you. Like I'll rock with it, right?
Yeah.
There's very few things that you like that I feel like either of us could do that would like upset or that we couldn't easily like chat out, work out, soothe. But at that time I was like, and like, you like showrunner, right? Like you kind of are responsible for all this, and I was like, ooh. Like, so it was a very interesting place to be. But man, like to your credit, you took it and just made it so believable, because like I could say that, right? But then like your reaction to it is the thing that makes it have the impact that it does, right? Like, because I mean, this scene goes on, and and Kellic has this like literal crisis of faith,
dude. The next episode is me just like looking into the literal void.
Right. And like that again, that when you, the most gratifying thing as a DM, I think, is when you do get the opportunity to have those big drops and twists, is when your players then lean in and take them and give them then the stakes in the characters. Because in a vacuum, I could just say like, oh, this is cool, and people be like, oh, sweet, but like Kellic's reaction to it is what makes it feel like such an earth-shattering event. Because like Kellic is the faithful of the party, you know, like to anybody else, it would almost have been like oh, well, that makes sense.
Totally.
Right?
Totally.
Like anybody else would be like, yeah, okay. And actually, a lot of the other characters did not have nearly the same reaction.
One of the hardest things for me to do in campaign one
I'm curious about this.
Was maintaining that faith and explaining, especially in a world where, you know, Ethan had a sort of like loose conception of like what the different gods did and stuff, and he really wanted us to like fill that out. But I was the only person who was like super religious, so I don't know what his work was like with Rodney, or even with like Cameron. But what I had to do as Kellic was try to convince the other parties that the gods were worth, or the other members of the party, that the gods were worth believing in. And it's like, but we don't really know that much about them. And like, you know, we only hear from them every so often. And like, you're absolutely right that the world is terrible right now. So like, where is this faith coming from in Kellic, and how do I like justify it? And so that was always a big challenge. So this moment's very like, as a player, it's super fun to get something so dramatic, but also one of the harder things of it, because me, the player, I'm like, yeah, it makes sense. I'm like, everything you're saying makes perfect sense to me. It would explain a lot, right? But for Kellic, it has to be that it's news to him, right? Like it's something that, and this is something that like I have said before, is like, I think players, you can have more fun as a player if you're willing to play a little dumb. If you could be like, yeah, I've read a book before. I know that if there's gods, they're probably fucked up or not real or something, right? Like that there's some kind of thing, right? But Kelly doesn't, you know, he's read books, but he believes this is the real God, and like, there's no way that there's any kind of there's no possibility that they could have been mortal, because that would change everything about what they represented. Right? And so it's like finding that kind of person, finding that place where you can see it from that way. It's a challenge, but it's like super fun, because then you get to be like, you're a liar! Right? Which is super ridiculously deep cut. My father's favorite movie is a movie called Breaker Morant, and it's a sort of court drama. And there's a moment where one of the characters stands up in his seat and slams his fist down and goes, "You're a liar!" And I quote it all the time. And so it was just amazing. Like, I was like, Kelly, I have to say something here, because like that was the big drop. And so I was just, the first thing I thought of was Breaker Morant.
Which, I mean, it's the literal first stage of grief, right? Is denial. Like, which is like immediately like, you must be lying, because if this is true, everything I believe
what can I,
is in a way not true. Which, and it's like, it's fascinating though, because like, you know, to your point, right? Like, I mean, even in our world, right? Like there are, you know, multiple, right, variations or versions of God, or conceptions of God in the world religions that we see. I mean, imagine like even our world, we are aware, right? And these people are aware that there are other, you know, it's not like people who believe in a Judeo-Christian God don't know that Thor's a thing, right? But imagine if they fucking found out, like, no, that guy's the real one, right? Like it would be earth-shattering to them, even though that knowledge might be there. Like in Elbor, there are other gods, but like, they're usurpers. Something's wrong. They've made a mistake has been made. But you just lent that so much weight, and it made the whole thing have the impact that you know I had hoped that it would have, and it was, and it all centered on you, and again, just like you did it fucking such a magical job of like leaning in and meeting me with it, and then we got the chance to, you know, to explore it, and then of course it gave me the opportunity to continue to build. And it's so funny because I was like, listening back to this, I'm like, this was my first episode, and then like
it's so crazy,
and I'm like, you're familiar. I know, right? Like it
looks like you've been DMing forever, like for like
you
guys, you've been with us. It
was just it's wild. And then like, but I'm like, oh wow, like the through line, like my first episode to the last, like from the ashes of a world that was already here. Like I go on to say that later, and I'm like, oh shit, I did like we delivered on that, not me, but we delivered on that, and it was so fascinating.
I want, you know, like credit where it's due.
we all like, that was the story, right? That you got, and again, like you bought into that, right? And it was such a blessing for me to come in that first time and have that buy-in. And it, you know, again, right? Like it goes back to this idea of like, how do you work with existing lore? Because that was Ethan, right? Like I definitely tweaked it, and I changed some elements. But you know, Ethan was like, one of the first things he told me, like on our first call, he was like, all right, high level, Elbor is a world that is cyclical. Like this is what the gods fall, the gods arise, gods, you know, fall, and there's always this big reset, effectively. So that was like out of the gate. It was one of the first things he told me about the world, and then of course, like, just events conspired that 3 or 4 weeks later, when I was bound to take over, you caught the one person who could tell you that was the
all
case.
the information,
and I was like, oh, wow. Okay. Yeah. I thought I was going to have a little more time to like parse out or figure out how to reveal that. And I was like, all right, we're diving in with both feet, I guess. Because like you caught like one of the single most knowledgeable people.
Yeah.
Which
did you know she was going to be there in that fight? Because basically, that's so funny.
I don't think I did.
Because Ethan set us up, because you were at the table as Brim, and then Ethan set up his final moment as a DM was this combat encounter between us and Barrett Hastel, the Paladin, and Artemisia.
Yeah.
Frida Artemisia, my goat. And so you didn't. So then you're taking over at the end of that fight, basically, as soon as it concludes. Yeah. Ethan might have thought that I was going to kill her, but then I didn't.
Yeah.
And then there you are.
Like, oh no,
man. Yeah.
It was. I don't remember. I know he told me. He told me that he wanted this like big encounter to be his kind of last like thing.
Yeah.
But I don't think I knew exactly who it was.
Who was going to be present? Yeah.
I don't think I remembered who was going to be there. But I knew who they were because the Harken Back, because I had been like just housing those.
Yeah.
So I was like, oh shit, like these are big. Like is him sure, but like Artemisia, the big hitter.
Yeah.
I think maybe Ethan thought that you would just murk her and then vengeance, right?
Totally.
But then Kellic, of course, you made this beautiful decision to have this character who like that was not the choice he made, which again just goes to, like it just is so funny because like right out of the gate again like just D&D, like
that's
your plan,
D&D,
that is D&D, right? Immediately I just got hit in the face with it, like, oh, fuck your plans. Your players are going to do things that surprise you and that force you to make these adjustments. It was awesome. And then again, I got this opportunity to like do something really big out of the gate and kind of cash in. Yeah. Right. Like we talked about this, about KTU and like the opportunity, you have this kind of opportunity sometimes when, especially co-DMing and like having these setups that you get to cash in on. Yeah. And like I got to cash in on Ethan's work right out of the gate. I got to be like, hey, all these ships, like, give me my money, which was super fun.
Yeah.
So I got to cash in on that in a big way. And then, I remember my vision or my hope for it was, we had kind of I kind of came in at this section of the story where we were in the resolution of like an arc of the Underdark and it was like we were in the very early exploration phases of like what are we going to do next? Yeah. Like where do the AOR go?
Where do we go from here?
And the decision had been to like explore almost past. Yeah. And so I was like, okay, like how do I give this a sense of momentum and direction, and that was nuts, And then to your point earlier, the gods, right, and like having Kellic, I think I mentioned like I want to make the gods more real, and I want to anchor them a little bit more in the world and build them out a little bit more so that in the end, when the idea. Whenever the resolution is like they feel not like they were just this thing that was in the background, but instead something that was like tangible and like really present in the overall arc of the story. Yeah. And you gave me some amazing opportunities to do that. I think some of which we will talk about in later episodes.
Yeah. We're gonna do a whole episode on gods in a couple weeks. So you'll get that.
I'll stop myself then because we don't want to take too much.
Just to steer it back toward like the world building. Yeah. Like how much did you know about, like, had he given you the Famir's? So he gave you that Famir had once been mortal.
Yeah.
Or what was?
Yeah. It? Yes. If I remember correctly, he had effectively said that the old gods were mortals. Yeah. I think his he had this. Oh man, I don't even remember. Like. It was all very loose. Like, I don't remember exactly. The idea that he had originally conceived was that, like, Vasronath was a god from a very previous cycle who had basically, like, been chained up in the basement and forgotten about. Yeah.
Which is sick.
And which
That's
is cool,
awesome.
right? Which is a cool idea.
Yeah.
But like it didn't go much further than that, because again, I think he had obviously probably plans and ideas, but at the time of the handoff, he was just like, I haven't figured this out yet.
Yeah.
Which was a really interesting place to go, because I was like,
Totally.
okay, cool. Like I get to now decide.
Right.
And Ethan had told me a couple of things, right? He was like, one, that had happened. Ethan also had thought that Elbor had gone through many cycles.
Right.
Which to me I was like, interesting, but I immediately was like, overwhelming.
Yeah.
I couldn't grasp it.
Yeah.
It didn't, like, I wrote this recently. I was like, I like a sandbox, not a beach. Right? Like a beach is too much sand. That's too much for me to play in. Like I need my little box, like I need a framework around my sand.
I love that. I just imagine you as like a 4-year-old.
Yeah.
It's too much sand.
Yeah, like
I need my box.
Yeah, I need my box.
I love that.
Oh yeah, because I've spoken to this a couple of times, but like I need these sort of points of light, right? I need enough structure for my little goblo hands to glob onto, so that I can make the connective tissue.
Totally.
When there's just too much, I get overwhelmed, and suddenly it's like it's that we've spoken to this, I think, in many formats, but like the idea that constraints lead to the best creativity.
Right.
Right. If you put a few constraints in. So I was like, well, what if it was a lot less?
Right.
What if it was like a handful?
Totally.
And immediately I was like, oh, and that's when then the slowly but surely over the course of many months, the end game became more clear to me.
You started to build that concept of
Yes.
like cocoon around
Yeah,
Elbor.
because that was not part of
That
Ethan's
was brand
original
new.
plan at all.
Yeah.
And I was like, what if? Yeah,
Yeah.
right. Like, and then of course I was like, well, what was I like to know, like, what's the origin of Elbor? Like, why did it start in the first place?
Right.
And then you had that cyclical thing, and then I had many other ideas for like world building and stuff that I'd done independently.
Right.
And I was like, ooh, that actually like some of the ideas that I'd had just for myself, and like
Totally.
someday I want to explore this.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh, that actually like marries really nicely if that constraint exists.
Totally.
And then it also gave us, right, like, some like room to play in for some other stuff.
Definitely. Yeah.
So yeah, it was
definitely with Key to the Universe. Like I resonate with that, with being like, oh, I have some stuff I was thinking about that fits. Like that. This is like, okay, cool. Because I've always enjoyed like the concept of you stumble upon, like you're a party of adventurers, you stumble upon a place where terrible things have happened and you have to unpack why, right? And the older, the more interesting to me, right? Like, and then it's like, oh, well, if it's a cycle world, it could be really old, right? Like we can go way back. And then it's like, and having it be like when you and I started talking, being like, oh yeah, it's a finite number of cycles, like a handful or whatever. Like that meant I could start to really define that and be like, okay, well, I'm not an archaeologist, but what would it be like if you were digging for this stuff, and like where would you find it? That kind of thing. And so it's really, really fun.
Well, and you have the added, I always think too, like, sometimes I maybe do get a little bogged down in like, well, what are the actual economic policies that lead to, like, I'm like, why am I thinking about this? And, like, well, what's the breakdown rate of granite under erosion, right?
Dude,
like, how long?
No, I did so much of that, and you're just like, whatever.
And
By the end of it.
Yeah, sometimes I'm like, fucking magic. Like, you know what I mean? Like, magic weapons
We
don't
always
degrade.
have that.
Yeah, which
and
is
even
lovely.
in a sci-fi setting, you can have like science magic, basically. Yeah.
There's some version of, right? Like
quantum erosion.
Yeah, early version. Oh, it's underground, so it's a little more protected.
Totally,
right? Like,
There's all that's
kinds
how fossils are created, like through sediment or something, with the way that it's like water existed, and so it preserved them, and then when the water goes away, it creates the fossil. Something like that.
It's awesome. The whole process is freaking fascinating.
It's amazing,
right? Like freaking science is dope.
Yeah.
But like you get this opportunity then to, like you said, right? You have a lot of different kind of things and levers you can pull as the DM to be like, okay, like this conceit we can get away with,
right?
And And that's what's really fun about world building, especially in this context. But yeah, I mean, and you know, like that's a perfect example. Like, you know, we got like the macro and the micro scale, and not even it's not even micro. It's like macro, right? It was like Ethan gave me this idea, right? This pre-existing condition that was like this world is cyclical and gods come and go, and one got forgotten about,
right?
And like why, and then you know, and I haven't figured out why or who or whatever. And he was like, he's crazy. That was another thing. Yeah. He was like, he's out of his mind.
Right. The
and
old,
I was
old
like,
god is
the old god.
Yeah,
That's been, the guy that's been chained in the basement for a while is fucking Looney Tunes.
Yeah.
And so I was another thing I kept was like, he's crazy, but I wanted to add that additional layer of like, but why did he get locked in the basement? What did he do?
Yeah.
Why?
Yeah.
And I was like,
that is, I think, like a great storytelling question, but it's also great for DMing if you want to create really good villains and really good heroes 100%. And all like really good NPCs. It's just like, well, why? Yeah. Just like be a 2-year-old about it. Be like, but why?
Yeah. And I mean, like eventually you kind of get to a bedrock.
Yeah.
Right? Where you're like,
yeah.
you're either like, well, I can't go deeper, and this makes enough sense.
Yeah.
Right? Especially in a world like D&D kind of has this, again, broad conceit that like gods are just roided up humans.
Right.
Right? Like they're still anthropomorphized in so many ways.
Yeah.
They are very alien in a lot of ways. But like ultimately some of their motivations,
have some kind of ego.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah.
Right? There's an element
they can
there.
be elevated, right? They can be smarter or wiser or whatever, or more kind, more good-natured than maybe most of mankind, but
or capable of incredible evils.
Yes, or more detached from their humanity because of their power or infiniteness.
Yeah,
right? Yeah. There's ways, but there's always comes down to like some element of them is relatable.
Yeah,
right.
And I mean, you know, for human beings, and again, the art of storytelling, I think like ultimately like gods in so many ways do have to be relatable. Otherwise, it's like, well, why talk about them at all?
Yeah,
like we have to find some element in them that's interesting to us to glom onto.
Right.
And so like I was like, well, I mean, what would a god that could see, you know, then it got into all those big questions like, well, why did he get locked in the basement? It's like, well, he did something bad.
Right.
It's like, well, why did he do something bad? And I was like, well, what does a god do? Why is a god motivated to do something that would make other gods be like, yo, bruh,
cool, dude, we get it. Their lives are insignificant.
Yeah, right. And it was like he did something very heinous to the creation.
Yeah.
And it was like, why did he do that? And I'm like, well, why would a god ever go against humanity? I was like, well, because they were going to fight back.
Yeah.
Right? It's self-preservation. And then I was like, oh, shit. And then that led to the whole initial thing of like, he foresaw the first ascension. Right? The first time that mortals in Elbor ascended. And so and I was like, oh, he's a god of time and destiny, which also added to like the layers of the madness. Right. It was like, you know, it's all gone awry, basically.
Right.
And then, you know, again, like but like pre-existing lore, and then you get to like, ooh, now I get to like, I had the skeleton, and then you get to flesh it all out, and you get to build that connective tissue and ask those questions. And I found like somewhere between 3 to 5 whys usually gets you to bedrock, right? Usually gets you to that like guiding principle, like why?
It is good to stop yourself before you get too granular.
Yes, right. And there is such and like eventually sometimes like we've talked about this. You're like fucking because
yeah. I don't really know.
Yeah,
but it doesn't make it a better story for me to find out. Like that, you can kind of find that place where it's like, I don't think that knowing the answer to that will enhance this for anybody.
Yeah, absolutely.
Except for the in-world scientist.
Yeah, right. Which sometimes it's funny because like we kind of are.
Yeah,
right. Because it's like you have to portray that in-world scientist, so you almost have to be like that.
It's a thing. Like I've read about lots of facetious critics being like the problem with like super smart characters is they're only as smart as the smartest writer in the room, right? For any like the one that comes to mind is like there's a female character in The Boys who her superpower, she's like a super genius or whatever, and she can see everything coming, sort of like, and it's like, well, yeah, but that's just a writer because they're writing everything that's coming, and if it has to make sense for it to. I don't know exactly where I'm going with this, but that is a challenge,
Yeah.
right? When you're writing smart characters too, is because you want to be like, the world has to have enough consistency for the smart people to be able to demonstrate how smart they are. You know?
Exactly.
Yeah.
You don't want to verge into like competency porn, right?
Right.
Which is a thing I've heard. I've recently learned of this
That
term.
was a sentence.
Like I recently learned about this term. Are you familiar with this?
No,
It's
what
like
is
you know
that?
how there's characters in like media who are just like fucking always.
Yeah.
They're just always on. They're always right. They're always smart. They're always prepared. They never get
Agony for me personally.
Exactly.
I hate it.
Yeah, and like
Yeah.
sometimes like there is a fine line I think between like aspirational versus like someone who's just like okay, like it's a criticism of Terry Goodkind's books, which when I was a young kid I liked because I was like, oh my gosh, this guy's so smart and he's so strong and blah blah blah.
Yeah.
And as I get older, I'm like, well, fuck Richard Roll. Like in so many ways, like it's like nobody's that good at everything.
Yeah.
They can't be, and it's kind of tiresome, right?
Yeah.
As you get older and you get more experience, you also just become, I think, much more intimately aware of like your own shortcomings, and more
flaws.
comfortable with them.
Right.
At least that's the hope, anyway. I don't even remember where exactly I was going with this, but like the idea
We're talking
that,
about like scientists in the world of
that's kind of in a way that's like a blessing, right? Is that like scientists in the world, like they can be super super smart, but they can still be wrong.
Right.
And I think that's a big learning.
That's important.
That like I feel like I for the longest time believed. And it was actually a Matt Colville video. He's a great game designer.
Is the one,
but he said on a stream or a video that I watched when he was like, you as the DM are not always obligated to give your players correct information.
Yeah,
because
yeah.
people are wrong.
People are wrong.
Like
or they
sometimes-
misspeak.
Or they misspeak, or they say, like that happens all the time.
All the time,
Right? Like in
yeah.
real life, like there are people who will say shit that is so wrong with their full chests.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And they're so misinformed. And that is like in a world that exists and that is real and that you can interact in, verisimilitude almost mandates that people are going to be wrong.
Better if they are. Yeah, as long as it's not like
Malicious.
Yes. Or like in misdirection to a point of breaching trust.
Yes.
These are all like every new thing we talk about. I'm like, we need to do a whole video on this
episode on
thing.
this.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I
right.
want to do one on the competency character. I think that's fascinating.
Yeah.
We could do a whole thing.
Right.
But
bring it
before
up,
this
like-
gets away from us,
Yes,
which I'm
'cause-
going to make a note right after that about the two things.
Yeah, competency porn
And
and,
then
like
mistrust.
accuracy
Yeah,
of information
accuracy of
and mistrust
information.
as a GM.
Yeah. Oh,
that's a good topic.
stuff.
That's
for
a
sure.
that's a deep. That would be a deep.
So
dive.
wait for that
Yeah.
one. But now we have a special segment
Oh,
where Rebecca,
as Russ would say.
So we're gonna do is it an Am I the Asshole or is it a horror
This
story?
one's a horror story.
Oh, horror
Related-
story.
D&D horror
Related
story.
to Dungeons and Dagrons, and these have no statute of limitations. They're from
Specifically taking over as like DM swaps.
Oh boy! Whoa! Okay.
because now you took over for Ethan, and like you and I have swapped DMing and playing. So.
absolutely. Shit, God damn it! I feel like I didn't ask you enough questions about like what it was like to take up.
That's
Oh my
another
God.
episode.
Oh, is
That's the
it?
next one?
Oh, okay, good. I'm like, I feel like I bogarted the time.
Oh, you're beautiful.
Too talkative.
There's no.
We love it.
You could not. Impossible.
All right, what is this horror story?
Read us the tale, Rebecca.
I will read it to you.
Yeah.
I'm going to start with the title.
Okay.
Okay.
And then this one is luckily has a TLDR.
Ooh.
And
love a
then
TLDR.
I'll read it.
Okay.
Oh, okay.
Or do you
Okay,
think,
so we get
or
to
do you think
react.
TLDR after the read?
What? Give us the TLDR, and then we'll give our first analysis, and then give us the full read,
And then the context.
And then,
yeah.
Okay, I can do that.
Gut check and then context.
Gut check. Okay, this is a Reddit D&D horror stories from 2 years ago.
Okay.
Okay.
So don't hate us if we say things about you. It's a very long time ago.
You put it on the internet.
Yeah, you don't get to dictate what happens after that.
This is called Player Turned DM Takes Over Campaign and Runs It to the Ground.
Oh
Ooh,
no.
all right.
Okay.
Oh, no.
TLDR.
Dun, dun, dun.
TLDR. I create a homebrew world for a pirate campaign, and for personal reasons, step down as DM. Player in the campaign picks up the role, convinces me to join as a player, and proceeds to throw consequences out the window, have a Deus Ex Machina, DM PC, and kill my PC's pet for no reason.
Ooh, there's a couple big red flags in that immediately.
Yeah. The thing that really hits me the most is the killing of the pet. It's like a lot of that stuff I'm like, well, maybe it's just a miscommunication or they just didn't understand the sincerity of the thing. But it's like, you gotta really mean it to kill a player's pet,
dude,
right?
I in a movie in media, sorry, just quick tangent, you could kill 100 people, but if you kill one pet, I will never forgive you. That's horrible to say out loud, but I'm sorry.
There's a game called Plague Tale Innocence, and they kill a dog in the very first cutscene. Put the game down. I was out. Nope. I was like, I'm not doing it. You can't do that to me right out of the gate.
Not fair.
Rip Penelope.
All right.
Rip Penelope.
Okay, so yeah, I mean, immediate red flags like DMPC, they can work, but for very brief stints, and they have to serve a purpose.
Yeah.
Right? Like Brim had to write him out very fast.
Yeah.
Anyway, and then the other one, there was one more. Oh, killing of the pet.
Yeah.
And no consequences. I already.
Throwing out
hackles
consequences.
All right.
Tell us the horror.
We're going to skip the context because nobody cares about context. And we're going to go straight into the actual story.
I trust you.
Excellent.
I trust your judgment.
One of the players of my campaign was a friend of mine who had DM'd for me and a different group in the past. So they have had DM experience.
Okay.
For this story, we'll just call him Warlock. Now, since I've known this guy for a while, I know that he likes power building. This will be important later. And while this is usually not an issue for me as a DM, I took this into consideration when building the encounters so that they will still be fun for other players. At the very start of the campaign, the players meet my DMPC, who was originally not meant to stick around. He was simply made to deliver the main quest line to the players and eventually leave. However, as the PCs began developing connections with the DMPC, we agreed to let him stay as a companion for the party, as I was very strict on not letting him influence the story or player decision more than he was meant to in the first place.
Okay.
The campaign was going well, but due to some real-life issues at the time that really burned me out, I had to step down as DM, seeing as I didn't think it would be fair to my players if I kept running the sessions when I wasn't enjoying myself. Since they were really liking the campaign, and I had the entire world and campaign notes compiled in a document, one of the players suggested having Warlock pick up where I had left it, since he was the only other player who had DM'd in the past. Seeing as I was stepping away from the campaign, I agreed. The original plan was to move on and let them do their thing, but since we were friends outside of D&D sessions, they suggested that I continue playing with them, but as a player, seeing as I wouldn't have the extra responsibilities of preparing and running the sessions every weekend, as I had been doing so far.
Yeah.
Reluctantly, I agreed.
Interesting.
I agreed because of how much I enjoyed the final product of the homebrew world, and since Warlock now had been given all of the world and campaign information. I then adjusted the DMPC so that he would work as an actual PC, parentheses, as mentioned before, he was made as a quest giver, so he was never really built for combat. From this moment on, everything goes downhill. Warlock seemed to throw all the notes I had left out the window to make up his own thing, which would not have been a problem, seeing as he was the DM, had it not been so jarring to the point it almost felt like playing a completely different story when the players were previously already halfway through. It felt as if he hadn't bothered to read where the original quest line they were following was going, to at least change or adapt it. It was more like he completely dropped it. The first issue was that he suddenly was impossible to... The first issue was that it was suddenly impossible to die. No matter what we did, Warlock would never let any of our PCs reach 0 hit points because his DMPC would swoop in and save the day.
Oof.
His DMPC was the character he had been playing while I was the DM.
Oh, God.
So already a super optimized. Okay.
Shoot.
The one he had power built.
Yeah.
As a DMPC, unaltered, Warlock kept the character with the party and would effectively still play him actively as a PC.
Nope.
The second issue is the one that to this day I still don't have an explanation for, was what Warlock chose to do with my character's pet. My fighter had picked up a small mouse that he traveled around with. No stat block. This little guy was as good as a flavor text. And Warlock started making jokes after the sessions about how he was going to ... kill the mouse since my fighter liked it so much. Not the kind of joke I find funny, but fine. He wouldn't do it without a reason, right? right?
I love your read of this,
Yeah,
Rebecca.
me
I'm
too.
really
I'm
enjoying.
enthralled.
You're adding some color to it. That's really selling
I'm
it.
enthralled.
The next session comes around, and my fighter decides to take some precautions with his mouse, seeing as Warlock hinted at us fighting some kind of serpent. So my fighter poked some holes into a wooden box he had with him and was planning on leaving the mouse safe inside while we fought. As I described how the fighter was going to protect the mouse inside the box, Warlock interrupts. As you're distracted with the box, a large creature lunges from the bushes, snatches the mouse from your hand, swallows it whole, killing it almost instantly. It was a homebrewed giant serpent. At this point, I'm almost at a loss for words because there is genuinely no reason why Warlock would need to kill my pet, and I was decently upset after that session, but still chose to keep rolling with it because this was a group of my friends.
God.
The third and last issue was the one that made me leave the campaign. One of the players, let's call him Rich.
One guy gets to be called Warlock.
Yeah.
This guy's just rich.
Wanted to fake his PC's death and have him rejoin the party later. Parentheses, please note that this was agreed upon with all of the players and the party was all right with this plan. End parentheses.
Okay.
However,
I was like, that's weird. I don't like it.
I don't like it,
Okay,
but
sure.
if you all agreed, great.
Yeah.
However, he never specified how. Well, post Rich's death, the party's ship was attacked by a kraken. Now, this was a major battle for our characters, and after 40 to 50 minutes of combat and draining a good 3/4 of our party's health, it looked like we may finally kill the kraken soon. When, as you wearily look upon the kraken, you see a familiar figure appear by the bow of the ship. As you might have guessed, it's Rich, back from the dead, with a brand new magical weapon. Rich deals the final blow to the Kraken, saving the day. Hooray! This situation, along with the fact that the Warlock's DMPC simply would not let us die, made the entire campaign and our struggles in combat feel incredibly pointless. That was the breaking point for me to leave my own campaign, which, from what I've heard, fell apart after a few more sessions due to Warlock dropping it.
Yeah.
Needless to say, I did not feel inclined to have him DM for me again, and for reasons outside of D&D, I ended up distancing myself from the entire group. Still hope to someday run this campaign as it was originally intended.
Yeesh.
Damn.
The
Yeah.
end.
That's a lot of
Sad.
bad.
That's a sad
that's just
story.
sad, yeah.
That's just like life too,
Yeah.
man. Ugh.
Yeah.
God. It is like the first part of it's so interesting because it is pretty like it's like if you came in and changed the cycle, like removed the cycle element of it or something like that. The way that it seems like this person Warlock changed this person's thrust of their narrative.
Or coming in and continuing to play,
Or just
Brim, keeping Brim.
Yeah.
keeping Brim, and just like deciding, no, you know what?
Yeah.
I know this was a god war, but
We're gonna fucking
We're
go.
We're gonna
we're gonna make it a monastery war now. I don't know.
Yeah,
like, yeah.
Which I mean, Brim was already pretty juiced,
He's juiced,
but
yeah,
like
for
he
sure.
was very juiced.
And I do think like there are scenarios where you can have a fail-safe for the players because you need to have certain narrative beats. Like, I mean, even I learned from this. I think I could do it better now. But even like in MCOR, I had Lucy as part of the fight, and Lucy was like nigh indestructible. You know, and I was just like, well, their stakes are about the kid, and there was one other. I can't remember what exactly it was. And I was like, they can all die still because like Lucy's going to be busy, but I had Lucy in there in case I needed some kind of like narrative outlet for some reason, and also because the players had specifically been like, why didn't you help us fight in previous episodes? And I was like, okay, that's fair. Like they can, but they're going to be really sick.
Because it's a fucking
they're going to be awesome
machine thing. Yeah.
So there's places where I think it's valid to do that, but I think there's when it's recurring. Now you're kind of
that's where you get into trouble, right? Like I mean, there were in the Corvin fight, like Hayfried and Kira were both
Totally,
there.
yeah.
And I was like, partially because like when the narrative kind of demands it, like Hayfried I never intended on, honestly.
Yeah.
Him being there, but then you guys like went
We
to
brought
him
him
and,
to
and,
the
and you
desert
brought,
with
yeah,
us,
you
too.
brought him to the desert.
Yeah.
And then it was like, well, I'm here, and it was an opportunity for him to like find redemption. And I remember I was like, the Transmuter Stone is a one-time, that's all he can do. Like
Right.
I was like, if it goes downhill after that, they're fucked. Like he can't help.
Totally. Yeah.
and-
And
but-
I think it's also like you, and I like to think myself, have a, or more generally, like DMs, you have to try to develop a sense of like narrative weight
Yes.
and what's going to remove that, what's going to take that away. Because the DM PC coming in and saving the day all the time, it takes away the stakes, right?
Well, yeah, because then now the player, like, it's like, I mean, like, there's a line where it's like, do you even need me for this conversation? Like, you know what I mean? Like, if the DMPC is just going to come in and rescue everybody all the time, then like, what the fuck do you need the players for?
Yeah.
Like now suddenly, like, none of their decisions matter.
Yeah.
And like, I think the guy in the post had mentioned consequences, right?
Yeah.
Like, it's like, if the players can't die, one of my favorite things about Dungeons & Dragons, like my favorite thing, is that like, there is no return to checkpoint.
Yeah.
Like, you can't do that.
No.
You know what I mean? If somebody dies, like,
It's done.
It is, you know, done.
Yeah.
Like the panic in my face at what's it called? At the end of in the Corvin fight when I was like, he has to disintegrate you.
Yeah.
And I was like, I might do it. Like I might freaking kill him right now.
Yeah.
And it was horrifying. And I'm so glad it didn't happen.
Well, and speaking of narrative weight, though, like in that moment, I was like, well, now's a good time. Like I was like, if I'm gonna go, at least it's in the final fight, right? Like you know, there's God stuff after this, right? But at least like if I'm gonna get disintegrated, like it may as well be at the at this moment by the Lich, you know? Like so, I was like okay with it because it felt like it was going to have that narrative weight if it did happen to happen, you know? Because the thing you really don't want is when it's not really a consequential fight and then you just happen to get killed off and it's
you're
like,
like, oh, no.
oh, geez, that wasn't what I expected.
But I mean, yeah, it's there's a lot of problems with that story. I mean, one is like coming, and I mean, I don't know, maybe some people don't feel this way, but like felt. I mean, I think I even said it when I first sat in the chair. I was like, thank you for trusting me with this. Because, like, I think that one of the things that maybe a lot of people outside of this hobby just maybe will never understand. Yeah. But it is like, these things matter. Yeah. Right? Like, I mean, if, you know, Ethan had done 116 episodes of Venture Forth, right? That is just the time to sit and do it, much less any prep time, right? Well,
totally.
Whatever.
Yeah.
That is
conversations,
a
meetings.
fucking Herculean amount of time, right? Yeah. And so this idea that, like, when you inherit something, right, there should be, if you're not a piece of shit, to like
Warlock.
Try to do it justice, you know, like you can change it and of course like try your best to make it your own, but like I feel like there's like an almost ethical obligation to try your best to honor the intent that it was set out with. And then it's like, even if you don't like love it, right? Like, or if you're not happy with certain elements of it, like, you know, like I was not happy with the constraint that there's only 5 gods in the world. I was like, that's not enough for me because like there's 12 cleric domains.
There's too much sand and not enough shovels.
And so like, and I was like, oh man, but again, it was like really interesting. I was like, hey, instead of like bemoaning it, I'm like, well, now here's an opportunity to instead like really try to think about these 5. And well, there were 10, but anyway, you get my point.
100%.
But like, there's like an obligation to do it justice. And then also like you couple that with obviously like completely turning the rudder on the whole ship because it was a pirate.
Oh, wow. This guy. Dude, are you like
I'll just see myself.
some kind of improvisational storyteller or something?
But I mean, Rebecca, what do you think? Yeah.
I think it's interesting because I want to kind of devil's advocate this. With the OP here, you know? Because he chose to stay on a campaign that he knowingly handed off.
He was gonna leave.
So it would be like Ethan staying on to play our game and then being upset with you for making choices, for making it, because he could have said you completely changed the ending.
Yeah, that's true. He could.
And you might not have, but you also did the best you could with what you had, right? And so we have to caveat that to say, you know, the OP says he had the entire thing written out,
Yeah.
but
Who
that
knows
doesn't
what kind of documents?
who
he
knows
really
what kind of
handed
and
over.
also we all know that this is improv and plans can change
Yes,
very
they
quickly.
can.
And so if Ethan had stayed at our table, there might have been
Yeah, he
some
might have been
friction
pissed.
felt there, or
I'd be like,
some.
Seth, you fucked it all up.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Could be. That's a fair
so
point.
just a
And as we all
grain
know,
of
there are two sides to
sand.
every story, right?
That
Who
is
knows?
true.
Warlock
That is
might
true.
be like, this guy, like, I made it better,
Yeah.
right? Like, for all we
yeah,
know.
yeah, but also
And he
like
was
killing the
annoying
pet.
everybody with
killing
his
the pet.
mouse.
There's no excuse for that.
The pet thing
mouse-
is funny to me because the fact that like
There's
with
one
the,
damning piece
with
of
the whole Rich scenario, I was kind of like, well, that's not a big deal. I don't really understand why that caused you to leave the game. But it's like when you break up over like. You forgot to bring chips to my friend's party, right? But it's really about something that happened way months ago, right?
That's
It's
the
like,
straw.
He killed the mouse, and after that, I think the OP was like, one more thing, and I'm
Yeah.
done. And it was just
Swear.
like Rich coming back and
Yeah,
killing the
from
Kraken.
the dead.
It's like, well, everybody was on board with that, so like, why not have it be dramatic and cool?
Yeah, it's like that's true, right? Like that's true. If you're all on board with it, and he was like gonna come back, like it
might as well be a fun little,
a dope moment.
little moment.
If you again, if
like
the conceit being,
but
you've
he's
all
like,
agreed.
I'm done, enough.
Yeah.
But I think it was about the pet.
Dude, I mean, but like if that's how it happened, then that DM's a dick. Like Warlock, that was a dick thing to do.
I want to know what OP was doing with his pet every day. Like, were you bringing your mouse into every fucking scene? Like,
Right?
Right. Well, that's the question. Yeah. I mean, having a pet, it's always that tricky thing of like it's the thing we talk about where
Yeah.
it's like we don't have to talk about every single thing the players do.
Yeah.
So we assume that you stow the mouse somewhere safe during.
I know you sleep, you eat, you go to the
combat.
bathroom
Right.
occasionally. Like
We
I'm
don't,
not.
we don't
I'm
need
not
to get
interested.
through all
Yeah.
that. Yeah. Whether or not you washed your hands.
Yeah, right. You wash your hands, you nasty. But yeah, hey, they walked for 4 hours.
Yeah.
Nothing that interesting happens.
Yep,
right?
that time has passed, and now you're there.
Yeah, right?
Now you're
Like-
there where the cool thing is.
But it is interesting, right? It's like, well, what was he doing with the mouse? What was the mouse's deal?
yeah, why did the DM feel
Why
the
did
need
he
to kill
feel
that
the need
mouse?
to kill it? And I'm like, watch, maybe.
Also, it was like a homebrew serpent. I'm like, there are plenty of regular serpents. Like a regular mouse can get killed by a regular snake, which both have stat blocks.
yeah, yes, they do.
So,
I'm
think you
curious.
need to homebrew anything.
Warlock, if you recognize this story and you see yourself in it, freaking at us, be like, that's not how it happened at all.
oh my god, that's my dream.
Yeah, right. Be like, wait, and then
where
like,
you
we
at,
just-
Warlock?
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
Like, give us your side.
That's
of the
just this
story.
guy's government name.
Warlock. Oh, I love that.
But yeah, if you have a horror story at home as
Yeah.
well, feel free to
Send it in.
I guess should we give our email, or should we just say hit
Yeah,
us
we
up on
can give our
Discord?
email.
Yeah, if you want to hit us up at ventureforthdnd@gmail.com.
Subject line D&D horror
D&D
story.
horror story,
Yes.
or am I the asshole?
Or
Please
yeah,
do send us
D&D
along.
MIAITA. or
AITA,
whatever.
yeah, we'll get into this
And
stuff because it's
you
very
too
fun.
can get a dramatic reading.
Yeah.
by
none other than. Look at us. Look at us.
Look at us. Look at us.
Like we're both DMs. Instinct for storytelling.
yes,
Gravitas
indeed,
and weight.
indeed. The wonderful, incomparable
Illustrious.
Rebecca.
I'm blushing.
And I guess, any other final thoughts on picking up? What would be one bit of advice? Like if you were going to hand the campaign off to somebody, let's say other than me, like
Yeah.
today, what would your like advice be?
It would be. Man, that's a good question. If I were to hand it off to anybody, I'd be like, these are the things that I, thought might happen or conceived of. These are the things that, in the universe are pretty cemented. But like, if you can find a way to, in the way that we've talked about, in a way that makes some form of logistical sense to you and is cool with everybody at the table to make changes, then make changes. Like worlds adapt, worlds change, worlds evolve, as we have all seen. And there's room for all of that. But I would say, I personally would say somebody spent a lot of time, effort, energy, and poured ideally a lot of love into this. So, try to do that justice in your own way, right?
Yeah.
Make it your own. Do what you think is fun. Do what you think is cool. But, try to at least honor what has been done, right?
Yeah, and I will say, like, one thing about Ethan leaving was he was so like right out of the gate. He was like, "It's all yours."
Yeah,
he
which was amazing.
He was like, "I abdicate. I understand that I'm giving this up."
Yeah.
And like, you guys own Elbor.
Which is hard to do.
Honestly, a beautiful gesture.
Yeah.
Because really hard to have, like you said, 116 episodes of him developing this world, building it, like not to mention all the time he spent building it before we even started the campaign, which like Russ and Rebecca, I think at least Russ and I, and then you later, Russ and I played like the alpha of Elbor like 6 years ago or something like that. And then like a year later, like Rebecca did the beta, like was Olma in like a sort of like home version of the current campaign, or of the campaign we just finished. And so like so much time put into this world, and then to just be able to be like, I understand, like he really respected what we were doing here, and
to Rebecca's point, you do, Ethan. Thank you, Ethan. And you know, there is an element of like, well, you gave it up. You know, like there is like, and I think, but in a normal, like, or in a healthy parting of ways, right?
Yes, yeah.
The one person would say, "Hey, this is everything I did, but like, it's yours now, right? I can't have my cake and eat it too.
Totally,
I can't give it up and then be mad that it gets changed,
right?
But you know, then on the receiving end of it, you usually like, I will do my best to honor what you have done, and then I'm going to make my own. So that's
and I think
collaboration,
making it your own is also like you respecting it in another sense, right? It's like not feeling so beholden to the previously existing stuff that you can't be creative.
Yeah.
Like that defeats the whole purpose of the collaboration, like you're saying. Yeah.
And because like, you get a different perspectives. I mean, fuck, like look at what, you know, like I was like, hey, here's all I have for this section of history. And you made some fucking awesome shit.
Yeah.
And I'm like, that's amazing.
I was like,
that's so much cooler than what I could have thought of. Like, and that's the beauty of again, collaboration. That's why so many people tend to work on source books and campaign settings.
Yeah.
Because you get different perspectives, you get different, you know, opinions. So how about you though? Is there any advice that you would anything you'd add to that?
Oh man. I think you really, I really hadn't considered the part of it you were talking about of just like, make sure you honor what's been done, in addition to making it your own. Because that would be the thing. I think like one of the things we talked about when you first came on is like, I was like, Rebecca and I both were like, we're in whatever kind of like just somewhat silly hierarchy there is in this thing, right? Like I'm your boss, and in a weird, you know, especially when you first came on, right? Because you were coming into this thing that had all this structure, you know. But I was just like, you, like when you're in the DM chair, you're in charge. Like, and I don't want you to ever feel any other way about that. And I like, so that kind of thing was same with like taking on somebody else's world. Is it's like once you're in that chair, like now it's yours. And that comes with a lot of like, I think you've said this before, like, or this is me quoting you quoting Ethan, but like the DM chair is a lonely place. Like it comes with its own responsibilities and challenges, and it can be kind of like sad because you don't get to like share everything you've thought of all the time. And but
despite my best efforts.
But it also is you get ownership of it, and you do, that is your mind is like you've said, we've talked about this before, where you're like, in my head canon this thing, and I'm like, that's the canon.
You said that on the epilogue. I was like, in my head canon, you're like, that is canon, by the way, because like you are the DM.
It's
I was
like
that's
your
fair.
world, you know, like it's the, so it's that would be my main thing, is like make sure you like recognize that like take ownership, like you're saying, like take hold of that and own it for all it is. You know?
And I think in a healthy collaboration, both of those things exist, right? Like on the one hand, you say, you know, you're like, I want to honor what the work that you have done. And the other person gets to go, but like also go ape shit. Do it, man. Like it's yours now. Go forth, be free. You know, and in a healthy collaboration, those two things exist very harmoniously.
And they feed back into each other, where it's like things are constantly evolving and changing and kind of like being surprising, and like I think that's really, really cool. There's one, I think there's like, this is just to put a button on it, some weird example. I think there's like an Elden Ring movie in the works or something, and it's some famous writer or director who's working on it, and they have never played the game and don't care. Like they've like said in an interview, they're like, no, I don't give a crap about that. I'm making this other thing. And I was like, and it's like not doing one half of that thing, right? You know, and then maybe it'll be great. But and also incredibly difficult to adapt. Incredibly difficult. But I just like, I do think there is an element of it where, especially when we look at like video game adaptations very specifically, it's one of those things that's very hard to do because a lot of times the video game elements get ignored. But all of that remains true with adaptations and all that good stuff, because that's all stories are.
Right. You always inherit something, right?
Yeah.
Whether it's even just your experiences, but
It's just
you
there
know,
in the air.
It's just there. But well, I mean, I guess that brings us to the conclusion of our first
very
ever
first
episode of what the hell we call
Mastering the Game!
Mastering the Game
With Seth
and Shane
and Rebecca.
and Rebecca.
But her name doesn't rhyme, so it's
Well, we'll see you next time when we do an episode. So thanks.
Thanks so
And,
much.
Bye,
Bye,
nerds.
nerds.